Good morning, everybody. I'm White Collar Carl, and I learned the hard way so you don't have to. So the first video, and which obviously is the title of this one, is on my surrender date. So this was the day that I was finally required to surrender to federal prison. I was designated to a minimum security prison camp, but it was unfortunately the site was at a maximum security prison. The prison was located in Pennsylvania, and unfortunately, due to the fact that we were going through the COVID pandemic, this was in November of 2020, so kind of in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, or the BOP, was quarantining any new inmates coming into a prison, whether they be self-surrenders, transfers, or just anyone coming in. And they were quarantining them for 3 weeks before they would put them into population, whether it be in the actual, at this case, the Maximum Security Penitentiary, or the minimum security camp, whereas I was designated to. So on the day of my self-surrender, my father-in-law and my father drove me down there. I gotta say, the ride was surreal. Like, I couldn't believe that I was actually going to prison. Leading up to this day, I did a number of videos and went through the different emotions and feelings and thoughts that I was going through this whole time. But, nothing really prepared me for that final day when I actually had to go ahead and turn myself in. It was about a 2.5 hour drive down there. And the whole time, my father-in-law and my father were in the front seat, and they were having a conversation, and I'm just sitting in the back seat, and just thinking about everything, thinking about the fact that I'm probably not going to see my family for 2 years, out on the outside. They'll be able to come visit me. Probably won't be able to see them at all or talk to them all for 3 weeks while I'm under quarantine, because we can't use phones, we can't get visits during that time. And little did I know, the prison was going to end up being on lockdown because of the resurgence of the COVID-19 infections in the prison. So we drove down there. On the way, I figured I'd get one last, meal in, and I'm a big fan of Egg McMuffins, so it was morning time. So I figured that, I get a couple Egg McMuffins, a couple hash browns, nothing too crazy, because I didn't want to get nervous and make myself sick or whatever. So we stopped, we had a little breakfast, and I'll say I was actually a little relaxed, and I'll show you my videos, eventually, prior to going to prison, and I took a video on the ride there, and when I arrived at prison and such, and I'll post this on this channel. So we had breakfast, and we sat there for a little bit talking, had a little coffee, and I was very anxious just to get there and get it over with. So, I told my father, I said, let's just go. I just want to get there. And, we probably had about 21 minutes from the time we left McDonald's to get there. And, I noticed that it was out in the middle of nowhere, which most prisons are. They're usually out in a very sparsely populated area, because probably the land is cheap, and I guess safety reasons too. They don't want to put prisons in the middle of a densely populated area for safety reasons, for that, obviously the community that surrounds that prison. That's not always the case. We have inner city prisons, but in this case, in most cases, they're on in these rural areas. So the prison I was going to was a smaller one, but it had a reputation of being one of the worst in the BOP. In fact, a show that I recently watched called Tulsa King, which was with Sylvester Stallone, and the first episode, right in the beginning of the series, in the show, he has some commentary, and he says, I just got out of prison. I was in the worst place in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and it was the prison that I was self-surrendering to, unfortunately. Obviously, I wasn't going to the maximum security prison, which he was probably alluding to, but I was going to the minimum security camp. That's where I would be staying. So we finally get there. We're pulling in. I see the entrance. I'm videoing it the whole time, taking pictures because I want to show everybody, this whole ride there. And we pull in, and the first thing I notice is there's these big towers, the kind you see at like these big prisons where you got the guys up top with the M16s or M4s or whatever they are, observation towers, big fences everywhere. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, Jesus, where the hell am I going? Alcatraz? Because, I thought I was going to a prison camp. But it was at a maximum security prison. And, we pull in, and there's two different driveways. One that goes to the camp, and one that goes to the maximum security prison. Now, the camp, all it looked like was like a one-level warehouse-looking building. And which made sense because from what I read ahead of time, the prison camp was just an open bay area. So it was kind of like a dormitory, not so much a dormitory, but like a, like what you would see in like an army barracks kind of, where they have the cots lined up in just one big room. And that's what I was told this prison camp is like. Unfortunately, that's not where I was going first. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to turn myself into the prison camp because that's where I was originally designated, or if I was supposed to go to the Maximum Security Penitentiary. So I was worried that if I went into the wrong place, I'd end up getting caught in, this whole transfer process. So I had my father go into the camp and ask. And, sure enough, they said, nope, he's got to get quarantined first, so he's got to go to the Maximum Security Penitentiary. So we went to the main entrance of the pen, and first thing I noticed when we pulled in is that every vehicle in the parking lot was this big ass pickup trucks. So obviously they're the vehicles of the staff, the COs, and you could tell these guys were country hicks. These were some country boys. All had big red, big American flags, or the rebel flag on their vehicles, and made sense. I know what I was going into. So I walked into the lobby, and to the left there is a desk or a table with a nurse or some type of healthcare professional taking temperatures. Probably because of the COVID thing, so they're screening and make sure you don't have a temperature, both for the people that are the inmates that are self-surrendering, but also for the guests or whoever that are bringing them there to make sure they can come in the building. So they got screened for that. Obviously, I had no problem. And then the two COs at the main desk, which was right in the front, said, just hold on. I got to call the unit to have them come down and grab you. And just get prepared to say your goodbyes to your family and give them any of your personal belongings that you're not supposed to have in there. The only thing you're allowed to bring in is your wedding ring, the clothes that you have on, any other jewelry, unless it's a religious jewelry like a chain with a cross. Give it to them, watches, anything like that. I had purchased a watch on Amazon that basically was identical to what I found out they were selling on the prison commissary list, because I thought maybe they'd let me keep it since it was identical. But no such luck. They made me give that away too, back to my family. So after about 15-20 minutes of waiting, probably the most anxious I've ever been, and I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel anxious, I didn't feel I don't know, I just not what I thought I would feel. What I felt was shame. I looked at my father and I couldn't believe I did this to him. He just lost his wife a couple of years prior, my mother. I was leaving him now too. I was leaving him alone. So I felt shame. I looked at my father-in-law. Of course, I felt shame because here I am, the husband of his daughter, and I'm supposed to be a provider. I'm supposed to take care of her. And of course, he wants a good man for his daughter, and I was far from that at that time. But I was lucky that my family, my in-laws, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they stuck by me through everything, and they've been one of my biggest supports. So I always thank them for that, and I, to this day, I will never forget that. So finally, the two COs come out, and they call my last name, and they said it's time to go. So I said my goodbyes to my father-in-law, and again, it was probably the only second time maybe third time in my life I saw my father cry. Once when my mother passed away, once when he first had to take me to rehab, and then today. Probably the only time was, thinking that 2 out of the 3 times my father's ever broke down like that was because of me. Again, the shame was overwhelming, and I just wanted to get this over with. So they left. They brought me back. The COs brought me back to get processed. So the first thing they did was take my ID to make sure that was me. They patted me down. Something I was going to get used to for over the next 2 years, because they are always making sure you're not carrying any contraband or weapons. They cuffed me in the front. They didn't feel it necessary to cuff me behind my back, and they walked me into the unit. The whole time there was other inmates outside doing cleaning and such, and when a new inmate comes in, everybody's always checking him out. Who is this guy? What did he do? What's his background? And they were all checking me out. So they brought me into this unit where they got processed. They took a picture of me to make a photo, prison ID. Asked me some questions about my, they knew why I was there, what my length of the sentence was, confirm my name, my address, things of that nature. And then they told me that someone would be by to come do a health check. So they put me in a holding cell, uncuffed me, gave me some clothing to put on, and told me to strip down and give them my clothing to them. They gave me a brown jumper, which is a one-piece jumpsuit, because that's the color they wear at that prison. A brown t-shirt, brown boxers, brown socks, and blue canvas sneakers, like you would see like Keds or like Van. They look like Vans, but they're obviously just a cheap generic version. Then they were obviously used. So I put that all on. I gave them my clothes. They asked me if I wanted to donate my clothes and shoes or have them sent back home. So, I asked them, I said, well, do I need to pay for the shipping, or how does this work? And they said, no, we'll send it to your house, or you can donate to, inmates that, are being released and need clothes. And I said, well, I want to keep my sneakers, whatever, so if you could send them home, send them home. So I sent them home. I said, why wouldn't I? Well, some guys don't like to have the clothes that when they first came to prison. Bad luck or whatever, and I can care less, so I just said send them home. So they put me in the cell, a holding cell that was right there, and then the guy from medical came. He was a nurse, he was a male nurse, and they brought me in this room. He did some checked my vitals, and then he asked me all about my medical history. I had brought in a bag of all my medications because I do have a heart condition, and I brought a month's supply of all my medications because I wasn't sure how long it would have to wait before the pharmacy there actually gave me gave me the medicines that I needed, which was a good thing because they ended up using those medications that I gave for the first week or so. And I got those medications. I brought some contact lenses because I wasn't sure if they let me keep those, because I do wear contact lenses, but they said that I could not have them. So they took those. They let me keep my glasses. That was the only thing that let me keep in my possession, was my glasses. So although I had my contact lenses in, I figured I'd wear them until, I didn't have any solution, so I figured I'd wear them until I could, tolerate them anymore, and then just use my glasses. So after that was done, I sat in the holding cell for a few hours before they finally took me to the prison unit, which was the quarantine unit for incoming inmates and outgoing inmates. So it's a unit where you get quarantined for 3 weeks, whether you're coming in or going out. So if you're leaving prison, going home, going to another prison, whatever, you have to get quarantined. If you go out for a medical procedure or something like that, you have to do the same thing. So I had to get quarantined in this unit. It was A block, and it was in the Maximum Security Penitentiary. Since I was a minimum security camper, they put me in a cell by myself, because all the other inmates there, or the majority of them, were maximum security inmates, and they couldn't mix us for safety reasons, which I guess was a good thing for me, because I didn't want to have to deal with any threats, and luckily I didn't. The cell had two, it had bunk beds in there. It was just basically a steel frame with a metal sheet for the bed, and they give you a bedroll, which consisted of a mattress pad, some sheets, a blanket, and a pillow with a pillowcase. They also gave me a couple towels, some liquid soap, toothpaste powder. Not even toothpaste, it was toothpaste powder you have to mix with water, and a short little toothbrush. No razors in the quarantine unit, so I guess I wouldn't be shaving for the next 3 weeks. So I sat in there, and they do have TVs in the day room, which is the center area of the prison block, but the angle that my room or my cell was at, I couldn't see any of the TVs, unfortunately. I could hear them, which was not a good thing, because sometimes when I wanted to sleep, that I'd hear this noise from the TV keeping me up the whole time, but I couldn't even see it. So it's kind of a bummer, and I had nothing to do in that cell. No books, no papers, nothing to read. So I just sat there and I thought about everything. When you're in a cell, you have no external stimulation. All you could do is think and daydream, and miss your family, because that's what I did. All I did was think about my family. What are they doing right now? What are they thinking? It was the beginning of what was going to be a hard time. But at this point, it was probably around 4 or 5 o'clock, which it looked like they were coming in to give chow or dinner, because I had missed lunch and they didn't offer me anything. So I was kind of hungry. Luckily, I had ate those egg McMuffins on the way in, and they brought in a styrofoam tray for your dinner. They give it through the hole in your cell door, because they don't ever open up those cell doors unless they're taking you out for a disciplinary reason, or you're getting taken out for a shower, which was twice a week. So they gave me my food, and I took the tray in. I had a little a desk that was attached to the wall with a little stool attached also, and it was weird because you could tell that the stool used to swing back and forth, but it was welded in place. And I found out later on that the reason for that was because when 2 inmates were in there, if they get into a fight, a lot of them would take that metal bench and slam it against the other inmate's head when they were down and injured, causing more damage. damage. So they started welding them in place so that couldn't happen. So I opened up a tray, and it was pepper steak night, I guess. And come to find out, that was going to be my favorite meal the whole time I was incarcerated, because it was actually really good. It was like a kind of like a roast beef, but it was sliced in strips. It wasn't, quality beef, but it was all right. It was in a gravy with peppers and onions, and they served it over rice with green beans. And I'm thinking, wow, this is this food's not going to be that bad. Little did I know, though, that was like the one really good meal that you don't get many of those, and that was my first one, my first impression. So I ate that up real quick, and again, just laid back down on my cot, was bored out of my mind. Decided to do a little working out, so I did some push-ups, some sit-ups, and some squats and things like that. And then I just went to bed. So it was a pretty uneventful day, and I guess I adapted pretty well from the start. But a lot of things were going to occur in the next couple of weeks that was going to make my incarceration absolute hell. And I'll get into that in my next video. So hopefully you enjoyed it so far. There's going to be more to come, a lot more exciting and interesting content. Unfortunately, this is probably just a little informational one to let you know what goes on your first day, your first self-surrender date. But that's how mine went, and I think you're going to really enjoy the next few videos, especially the next one. The next one's really good, and I have a lot more good ones that you're going to enjoy. So stick around, like and subscribe, so that way you get notifications, or they'll pop up in your on your YouTube page when I post new videos. And keep coming, spread the word. Thanks, everybody. Take care.